Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to try and map a career that really it defies our modern ideas of longevity, of versatility.
It really does.
We're looking at a performer whose professional life spanned, 80 years?
Hmm.
From her first film during World War II right through to the streaming age.
An incredible arc. We are, of course, talking about Dame Angela Bridget Lansbury.
And the sheer scope of what she did, across film and the stage and television, it suggests more than just talent. It's this unmatched ability to reinvent herself.
It is a truly unique trajectory. I mean, Lansbury didn't just survive the changes in the entertainment world. She mastered three, fundamentally different eras of celebrity.
How so?
Well, she was constantly adapting. She went from being a young contract player in classic Hollywood to becoming the undisputed queen of Broadway musical theater.
Right.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, she cemented her legacy as this beloved global television icon, and she did that in her late middle age.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to trace that almost miraculous journey. We want to understand the influences of her, her English-Irish background, how she fought against being miscast by the biggest studio in Hollywood, and what it took, both professionally and personally, to achieve that triple crown of fame.
And I think we have to start by just establishing the sheer magnitude of her achievement right up front. The awards alone tell this incredible story of skill and, frankly, perseverance.
Okay, let's lay them out.
She collected 6 Tony Awards over her career.
Yeah.
6, including a special Lifetime Achievement Award for her contribution to the stage.
Which is just staggering.
Then she has 6 Golden Globe Awards. And of course, she holds the distinction of being appointed a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, a DBE by Queen Elizabeth II in 2014.
These awards, they really do reflect a mastery across every major venue, don't they?
Completely. Film, stage, television. She excelled in all of them.
That's exactly right. And to really process this career, I think we need to divide it into those 3 distinct identities you mentioned, the ones that allowed her to perpetually shift and grow.
Okay.
So first, there was that early phase, the Hollywood ingenue, often, stuck playing these dramatic roles that were way beyond her actual years. This was sort of the phase of frustration.
Right. Then came the big transformation, the stage phase, where she becomes the first lady of musical theater, completely dominating Broadway. And surprisingly, she does this in her 40s and 50s.
And finally, the phase that defined her public image for billions of people.
Well,
the global household fame she got as the eternally beloved and very sharp television sleuth, Jessica Fletcher.
For 12 seasons and even beyond that, an icon.
So let's start at the very beginning and unpack her really unique family background. Angela Lansbury was born on October 16, 1925.
And she always had to clarify where she was born, which is interesting.
Right, because of her family's famous political connections to East London. The family was steeped in the history of Poplar, but she was actually born into a very comfortable upper-middle-class home in Regent's Park in central London.
Her parents provided this fascinating, almost contradictory mix of wealth, art, and pretty radical politics.
Let's start with her mother.
Her mother was Moyna McGill, an Irish actress who had a really notable career for herself on the London stage in the West End.
Yeah, and then her father, Edgar Lansbury, he was a wealthy English timber merchant, which is where the family's financial stability came from. But politically, he was a fascinating figure.
Oh, Communist Party politician who also happened to be the former mayor of the Metropolitan Borough of Poplar. It's not a typical background for a young girl in the 1930s.
Not at all. And the political influence didn't even stop there. Her paternal grandfather was George Lansbury, a truly towering figure in British Labour politics.
He was the actual leader of the Labour Party from 1932 to 1935, a major public figure.
And Angela Lansbury remembered him with his genuine reverence. She called him a giant in my youth. This whole mix meant she grew up surrounded by high drama, both theatrical and political.
She often connected this dual heritage, her English-Irish roots, to her acting strengths. And I think that gives us a profound insight into how she developed as a performer.
She said she felt eternally grateful for the Irish side of her mother's family, which she credited for her sense of comedy and whimsy, the side that gave her warmth.
And she contrasted that with her English half.
Right, which she felt gave her that reserved, more structured side. She saw the combination, the whimsy and the reserve, as the perfect good mix for acting, because it allowed her to access both deep emotion and lightness.
It's a very self-aware analysis of her own tools as an artist.
However, this privileged and intellectually stimulating childhood was shattered very early on. When she was just 9 years old, her Her father tragically died from stomach cancer.
And this loss, by her own account, was seismic. We often see patterns where an early trauma shapes an artist's path, and this seems like a very clear case of that.
How so?
Well, following his death, accounts suggest she retreated into playing characters. It was a psychological coping mechanism.
A way to deal with the grief.
Exactly, a way to manage that intense grief by temporarily becoming someone else. And that mechanism, playing roles, very quickly formalized into her life's ambition.
She briefly attended the Webber Douglas School of Singing and Dramatic Art in Kensington, but then the world just intervened drastically.
World War II.
As the war intensified and the Blitz began to rain down on London in 1940, her mother made a crucial life-changing decision. They had to leave.
Moyna McGill realized that if her daughter was going to have any kind of career, and really if they were going to survive, they needed to get out of Europe.
So they traveled aboard the Duchess of Atholl, an ocean liner, ultimately arriving in Montreal, Canada in August 1940. She was with her twin brothers, Bruce and Edgar.
From there, the family moved quickly to New York, where Lansbury got a scholarship from the American Theater Wing to study at the Fagan School of Drama and Radio. But the real draw, the magnetic pull of the industry, was always Hollywood.
She and her mother arrived in Los Angeles in 1942.
But it wasn't an immediate success story, was it? This is where the reality of the immigrant experience kind of meets the Hollywood dream.
Absolutely. Both she and her mother initially struggled to find any work. They ended up taking seasonal jobs, just working the Christmas rush at the Bullock's Wilshire department store in L.A.
And there's a great little story here. Her mother's dramatic instincts apparently didn't translate so well to retail. Moyna was actually fired for incompetence.
Which left the entire family to survive solely on Angela's wages, which were a meager $28 a week. Just think about that. The future Dame Angela Lansbury was surviving on minimum wage in 1942 Hollywood.
But then luck, or maybe destiny, arrived pretty swiftly.
Her mother, always the actress, hosted a party. And at that party, Lansbury met the screenwriter John Van Druten, who had co-authored the script for an upcoming psychological thriller. This meeting was the single thread that pulled her instantly into the A-list orbit.
And that film was Gaslight, released in 1944.
She was cast as Nancy Oliver, the cheeky, manipulative Cockney maid, a role that was perfectly suited to her dramatic accent and her sharp wit. The source material says she was considered perfect for the part immediately.
What's just astonishing is her age. She was only 17 years old when they were filming.
Which meant what, legally?
It meant a social worker had to legally accompany her on set to ensure they were complying with child labor laws. But despite her youth, her professionalism just shone through. She signed a 7-year contract with MGM for $500 a week.
And that very first performance
earned her a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. It's a truly phenomenal, almost unprecedented start for a newcomer.
She followed that with another major film, National Velvet, also in 1944, which led to a cherished, lifelong friendship with her co-star, Elizabeth Taylor.
And the critical acclaim just kept on coming. Her third film, released in 1945, was The Picture of Dorian Gray. She played the tragic, innocent singer, Sybil Vane.
And that performance earned her a Golden Globe Award and a second nomination for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. So by the age of 20, she has 2 Oscar nominations and a Golden Globe.
The expectation at that point must have been pure celluloid superstardom.
What's so fascinating is that despite that absolutely spectacular beginning, the next decade, the 1950s, was marked by this profound professional disappointment.
Right. She had signed that contract with the biggest studio in the world, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but they completely failed to capitalize on her early promise.
This is a classic example, isn't it, of the crushing limitations of the 1950s studio system.
Absolutely. MGM kept her under contract. They cast her in 11 more films until 1952, but she was consistently relegated to their B-list roster. She was the supporting actress, never the star.
And she felt very deeply that she was consistently miscast by the studio. This is an analytical point we have to explore. Why did MGM keep pushing her into these older, often cynical or villainous roles?
It was so pervasive that she complained she was getting fan mail in her 20s from people who legitimately thought she was in her 40s.
Which is just incredible.
The studio system, it often struggled to identify genuine dramatic leads who didn't fit a very specific sanitized mold. Lansbury had this unique dramatic intelligence and a kind of physical maturity on screen, which the producers just incorrectly equated with older age and gravitas.
She wanted to play the Jean Arthur roles, The quirky, unconventional, non-glamorous leading women who were allowed to be funny and complex and central to the story.
Instead, she was perpetually the antagonist. She famously lamented that the studio kept casting her as a series of venal bitches.
They recognized her strength, but they didn't trust her to carry a picture as the romantic or the quirky lead, so they effectively just boxed her in as the dramatic foil.
And this period of professional frustration, it coincided with some significant personal growth and some initial turmoil as well.
In 1945, right after that second Oscar nomination, she entered into a very brief, troubled marriage with the actor and artist Richard Cromwell, who was 16 years her senior.
That marriage lasted less than a year. It ended in divorce in 1946.
And the source material handles this very sensitively. It notes that the reason for the divorce was that Cromwell was gay, and he had married her in the unsuccessful hope that it would make him heterosexual.
It's a very sad reflection of the pressures of that era. But thankfully, they did manage to maintain a close friendship until his death decades later.
You contrast that turbulent, brief episode with the remarkable stability she found with her second husband, Peter Pullen Shaw.
They married in 1949 and stayed together for 54 years until his death in 2003. Shaw, who was a former actor turned agent and producer, he really became the rock of her life.
The couple became naturalized U.S. citizens in 1951, though they did retain their British citizenship. And together, they raised two children, Anthony and Deirdre, along with Peter's son, David, from a previous marriage.
And this stability was so crucial because her professional life outside the studio system was getting more and more precarious.
Right. When her contract with MGM finally ended in 1952, she moved into freelance work. But the typecasting had become totally entrenched. She struggled to find leading roles in A-list films.
So she began supplementing her film work with appearances on the stage. She made her Broadway debut in a French burlesque called Hotel Paradiso in 1957.
She actually credited that theatrical work with preventing her career from totally fizzling out during that long dry spell.
The depth of her desperation for work in this era is really emphasized by some of the roles she took. In 1961, she starred in the Elvis Presley film Blue Hawaii, playing the mother of Presley's character.
And here is the truly shocking fact that underscores her miscasting. She was only 36 years old.
And merely 10 years older than Elvis himself. When she talked about this role later, she was very open about it. She admitted she took it because she was desperate. That just shows you the grinding reality of being a B-list actress in Hollywood at that time.
But the roles she accepted during this period, however desperate she felt, eventually led to a critical cinematic triumph.
In 1962, she starred in the Cold War thriller The Manchurian Candidate.
She took on the role of Eleanor Iceland, the terrifying, hyper-patriotic, and utterly manipulative mother who is actively collaborating in a conspiracy to destroy America.
This performance was just a masterclass in psychological villainy. It instantly redefined her cinematic image from just a supporting actress to a genuine critical force.
And again, the age difference was absurd.
She was only 3 years older than Lawrence Harvey, who played her brainwashed son. The fact that she could pull off the role of a woman 2 decades older with this chilling intensity that defined the film, it just speaks volumes about her talent.
It's astonishing. Critics and audiences recognized it instantly. The performance earned widespread acclaim. It's frequently cited as her best cinematic work, and it resulted in her 3rd Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress.
It was her enduring cinematic triumph, and yet, still not the lead.
Despite that critical success, the lead roles, the big box office stardom, it just continued to evade her in film. She remained really dissatisfied with the minor roles that followed.
And it was this sustained frustration that pushed her to realize that if she wanted to be a star, a real star, she couldn't rely on the whims of Hollywood producers. She had to take control on the stage.
So if the first 2 decades were defined by this frustration and miscasting in film, the period from about 1966 to 1984 saw Angela Lansbury fundamentally redefine her career.
Yes, she became the absolute definitive star of musical theater. She earned the title First Lady of Broadway.
And the turning point was monumental, accepting the title role in the musical Mame in 1966. Mamie was the musical adaptation of the beloved novel Auntie Mame, and the role required just unparalleled charisma, comedic timing, physical presence.
What's truly fascinating, and what the source material really emphasizes, is that the critics were genuinely surprised she was cast.
Why is that?
At 41, she was primarily known as a dramatic film actress, a supporting player. This was her very first starring role on stage, and it required her to manage this incredibly elaborate production. We're talking over 20 costume changes, 10 complex songs, extensive dance training, none of which she was really known for.
But the risk paid off.
Immediately. Her performance as the glamorous, bohemian Mame Dennis was an overwhelming triumph. She captured the spirit of the character perfectly. The reviews were ecstatic, praising her energy, her ability to make the role her own. The show was a massive hit.
And she won her first Tony Award for Best Leading Actress in a Musical.
Right. The cultural impact was also huge. The character of Mame Dennis was already a massive cult figure, particularly in the gay community, because of the novel's themes of nonconformity and acceptance.
And Lansbury's portrayal just amplified this. She gained this immense cult following.
She even analyzed this connection herself. She attributed it to Mame Dennis being every gay person's idea of glamour, this fierce and loyal champion.
This triumph on the stage was the validation that Hollywood had denied her for 20 years. And yet, the sting of Hollywood's continued disregard was still sharp.
When the film adaptation of Mame was put into production, Lansbury, the Tony-winning definitive stage Mame, she was shockingly overlooked.
The studio, prioritizing box office success over stage authenticity, chose the established television and film star Lucille Ball instead.
And Lansbury never minimized the impact of that decision. She called it one of my bitterest disappointments. It was a powerful lesson. Even being the best in the world in a role didn't guarantee you'd get the film version.
This professional disappointment coincided with a period of intense personal crisis, starting around 1970. It really shows that even at the height of professional success, life can throw devastating challenges your way.
It was a traumatic time for the whole family. Her husband, Peter Shaw, was facing serious health issues, undergoing hip replacement surgery. But more critically, their children, Anthony and Deirdre, had become deeply entangled in the destructive excesses of the 1960s counterculture in Southern California.
It was a very difficult time. Their son, Anthony, developed severe drug problems. He was struggling with addiction to both cocaine and heroin.
And the source material highlights another terrifying detail. Their daughter, Deirdre, became involved with the circle surrounding Charles Manson.
And when we talk about this, we have to recognize the vulnerability of her children during that volatile time. They were victims of that environment and the dangerous people who sought to exploit that counterculture movement.
The situation was genuinely harrowing. It put the family in immense danger. It was an absolute crisis point for Lansbury as a mother.
Dealing with Anthony's spiraling addiction and just the sheer danger of that Southern California environment, Lansbury and Shaw made a radical decision. They fled.
They moved from Malibu to a remote, rustic location, Knockmorn Glebe, a farmhouse in rural County Cork, Ireland.
This was intended as a life-saving escape. The anonymity of the Irish countryside provided a safe, clean environment that was necessary for Anthony's recovery.
And Lansbury noted that the anonymity was so complete that she was known simply as Mrs. Shaw in the local village. She literally stepped away from the spotlight to save her family, proving her primary role was always that of a mother.
Despite that intense focus on her family's recovery, she did maintain her theatrical career, often dividing her time between the peace of Cork and the demands of New York.
In 1973, she was offered the role of Mama Rose in the musical Gypsy. She initially hesitated, very nervous about following the legendary performance of Ethel Merman, who originated the role.
But when she accepted, she completely triumphed. Her performance in Gypsy was transformative. She earned rave reviews, particularly when it opened in London's West End, where it ran for over a year.
And when the production moved to Broadway in 1974, it secured her a third Tony Award. She had demonstrated her ability to follow a legend and completely redefine the role.
We should also note that at the same time as her stage reign, she also secured some crucial commercial success in family films, which really diversified her audience base.
In 1971, she starred in the Disney film Bedknobs and Broomsticks, playing Eglantine Price, the English witch tasked with saving Britain from the Nazis.
That film was a major commercial hit for Disney, especially overseas, and as she pointed out, it secured an enormous audience for her, a younger audience that might not have known her from her earlier dramatic villain roles.
She continued to show her cinematic versatility in the late 70s, moving into these ensemble roles in Agatha Christie adaptations. In 1978, she played the eccentric, alcoholic novelist Salome Otterborn in Death on the Nile.
Right, starring alongside a massive cast, Peter Ustinov, Bette Davis.
And that performance earned her the National Board of Review Award for Best Supporting Actress.
But the absolute peak of her stage career, the moment that showed her incredible dramatic range in musical theater, that came with her role as Nellie Lovett in Stephen Sondheim's industrial horror musical Sweeney Todd.
This was a role of intense psychological complexity. It required significant vocal dexterity to handle Sondheim's intricate scores and witty, rapid-fire lyrics.
She took on the role in 1979 and stayed with the difficult production for 14 months. She described her affection for the show, saying she loved the extraordinary wit and intelligence of his lyrics.
And that intense, demanding performance earned her her fourth Tony Award. She was now cementing her place as a legend, not just a star.
She attempted a quick return to the stage with a revival of Mame in 1983, but it was short-lived and commercially unsuccessful. She reflected pretty critically that the show had become a period piece, and the era of that particular glamour was over.
And that dissatisfaction coincided with this crucial pragmatic reflection about her career's purpose and its reach. She articulated that she did not want to only reach just the people who can pay $45 or $50 for a theater seat.
She saw television. She saw it as offering a chance to play to a vast U.S. public. This belief in sort of democratizing her art form, reaching the masses directly in their homes, it set the stage for the most famous phase of her entire life. So the shift to television came in 1983. She's a stage legend in her late 50s. She's presented with two major network roles, a traditional sitcom and a detective drama.
And her agents were heavily in favor of the sitcom. They saw the financial security, the almost guaranteed success of that format.
But Lansbury, ever the risk taker, she chose the drama. Murder, she wrote. It was choice that prioritized character integrity and creative longevity over immediate trends.
And it led directly to the role that would define her public image for the last 4 decades of her life.
The character she took on, Jessica Fletcher, instantly resonated with her. A retired English teacher turned enormously successful detective novelist from the fictional, charmingly quaint town of Cabot Cove, Maine.
Lansbury affectionately described the character as an American Miss Marple, drawing that immediate connection to the beloved, non-threatening British amateur sleuth.
The show premiered on CBS in 1984, and its format was a very deliberate throwback. It was designed as inoffensive family viewing, adhering strictly to the classic whodunit structure.
And consciously avoiding the graphic violence and gore that was starting to dominate other American crime shows of the 1980s. Lansbury really appreciated this choice. She stated emphatically, "Best of all, there's no violence. I hate violence."
Murder, she wrote, quickly became a cultural phenomenon, and it was especially significant because it featured an older female protagonist in a lead role, something almost unheard of in primetime network television at the time.
Right, and Lansbury understood the significance of this. She praised Fletcher's enormous universal appeal.
Initially, the show was overwhelmingly popular with senior citizens, the audience often overlooked by network executives who were just focusing on the younger demographic.
But the quality and consistency of the show broadened its appeal. By 1991, fully 1/3 of the viewers were under the age of 50. It truly transcended demographics, becoming a fixture of Sunday night television.
Behind the scenes, Lansbury quickly assumed significant career-defining creative control over the character.
She dictated Jessica Fletcher's costumes, making sure they were sensible and reflected her Maine lifestyle. And she carefully managed her makeup and hairstyle to reflect an intelligent, mature woman, not a glamorous Hollywood star.
Most critically, she rejected repeated and intense pressure from network executives.
They felt the character needed a romantic storyline or a partner to appeal to a wider audience. But Lansbury stood firm.
She insisted that Fletcher remain a strong single woman. She was determined to protect the character's integrity as a role model for women who were single, were widowed, or simply focused on their careers and their intellectual lives.
And if she felt a scriptwriter had Fletcher saying or doing anything that felt inconsistent with her established personality, say, showing fear or a lack of intellect, Lansbury, now a producer, made sure the script was changed.
This control really ensured the show's quality and consistency. Murder, she wrote, maintained sustained high ratings, consistently performing well in its time slot.
It even managed to outdo rivals, including Steven Spielberg's heavily promoted anthology series, Amazing Stories.
As the show continued its successful run, Lansbury's control only increased. She and Peter Shaw established Corymore Productions, and by the final 4 seasons, she was serving as an executive producer.
which gave her final say on all creative decisions, from casting to location scouting.
The series ran for an astonishing 12 seasons until 1996, eventually tying Hawaii Five-0 as the longest-running detective drama series in history at that time.
The cancellation was highly controversial, and it certainly wasn't due to declining quality or audience interest in a vacuum.
No, it was triggered when short-sighted CBS executives moved the show to a highly unfavorable time slot, Thursday night at 8 p.m., placing it directly opposite NBC's new smash hit sitcom, Friends.
And Lansbury was reportedly quite upset. She felt that the scheduling change deliberately ignored the long-standing core audience that had kept the show successful for over a decade.
While the main weekly series ended, the franchise demonstrated its continued appeal. There were 4 successful made-for-television films, concluding with The Celtic Riddle in 2003.
The role of Jessica Fletcher had become, commercially and culturally, the single most successful and prominent role of her entire multifaceted career.
And at the same time as her rise as the television detective, she also achieved this beloved role in animated history. In 1991, she provided the voice of the singing teapot, Mrs. Potts, in the Disney animation Beauty and the Beast.
She didn't take that role for commercial reasons. She stated she took it specifically as a gift for her 3 grandchildren, who were all quite young at the time.
And her rendition of the title song became an absolute classic.
She later lent her voice again to animation, playing the Empress Dowager in Anastasia in 1997.
Her global fame as Jessica Fletcher was a commercial goldmine. She endorsed major brands like Bufferin and MasterCard.
And she leveraged her public image as a healthy, active older woman into publishing a book co-written with Mimi Avins in 1990. Angela Lansbury's Positive Moves, My Personal Plan for Fitness and Well-Being.
And despite spending 9 months a year filming in California, her emotional anchor remained in Ireland. In 1991, she built Corrymore House, a substantial family farmhouse overlooking the Celtic Sea in County Cork.
This home became her retreat, a place where she consistently spent holidays and summers, ensuring that the peaceful, family-focused environment that saved her son remained a constant in her life.
The 21st century opened with a bit of a pause in her career, and it reflected a deeply personal preoccupation. After Murder, She Wrote concluded its main run. Lansbury spent those years focused intensely on her husband Peter Shaw's deteriorating health.
The seriousness of his condition forced her to drop out of a scheduled stage musical, The Visit, in 2001. She was prioritizing caregiving.
Peter Shaw, her husband of 54 years, died in 2003 from congestive heart failure.
This was a devastating loss, and following his death, Lansbury felt she would never take on major acting roles again, only perhaps accepting small cameos. She was truly in mourning and stepping away from the demands of the profession.
We have to credit the 2005 film Danny McPhee with pulling her back into the spotlight. She played the stern, wealthy Aunt Adelaide, a small but important role.
She later credited this return to work with pulling her out of the abyss of grief. It really demonstrates the therapeutic power of returning to your craft.
But her true artistic resuscitation came on the stage. After a 23-year absence from a major starring role on Broadway, she returned in 2007 in the play Deuce.
And this set the stage for one of her final great triumphs. In 2009, she starred in a revival of Noel Coward's classic comedy Blithe Spirit. She took on the role of the eccentric, delightfully batty medium Madame Arcady.
And that choice resulted in yet another Tony Award, her 5th competitive Tony for Best Featured Actress in a Play.
This tied the record held by the legendary stage actress Julie Harris. At 83 years old, she was still winning competitive awards in the toughest medium there is.
This late career triumph also finally brought her recognition from her home country, Britain, in a way she had long deserved.
In 2014, she reprised the role of Madame Arcady in London's West End. It was her first London stage appearance in almost 40 years. And for that performance, she won her first Laurence Olivier Award, the highest theatrical honor in the UK.
Looking across her career's awards reveals this striking and somewhat humorous duality.
The Emmy anomaly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Despite winning 5 competitive Tonys and 6 Golden Globes, she holds a rather unfortunate record, the most unsuccessful Primetime Emmy Award nominations by a performer. As of 2009, she'd been nominated 18 times for Murder, She Wrote, without ever winning a competitive Emmy.
The contrast between her stage and screen awards is stark.
Hollywood, however, did eventually make amends for their early miscasting and the Emmy situation. In 2013, she received the Academy Honorary Award for her lifetime achievements in the industry.
And the inscription on that Oscar was deeply meaningful. It cited her for creating some of cinema's most memorable characters, inspiring generations of actors.
And perhaps the award she cherished most, the one representing that nod to her political and national heritage, arrived in 2014.
When she was appointed Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, the DBE, by Queen Elizabeth II, Lansbury spoke with genuine emotion about the honor, calling it that nod of approval by your own country.
She remained remarkably active even into her early 90s. She appeared in Disney's Mary Poppins Returns in 2018 as the Balloon Lady,
And provided a voice role in the animated film The Grinch that same year.
her absolute final film appearance, a poignant capstone to her magnificent career, was a cameo as herself, featured in the 2022 film Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery.
Her family, meanwhile, had sustained her professional legacy. Her son Anthony directed 68 episodes of Murder, she wrote, and her daughter Deirdre established a successful restaurant in West Los Angeles.
Throughout her immense career, even at the height of her Jessica Fletcher fame, she was described by those who knew her as profoundly private, meticulous in her preparation, and reserved.
Right. The public image of the chatty, busy sleuth was a brilliant performance covering the reality of a fiercely private woman.
Dame Angela Lansbury died peacefully in her sleep at her home in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles on October 11, 2022. She was 96 years old, just 5 days shy of what would have been her 97th birthday.
Angela Lansbury's legacy is really a story of strategic adaptation. She achieved genuine critical success in the dark corners of cinema, only to find her greatest theatrical triumphs on the musical stage.
And then finally attained that global, enduring celluloid superstardom only when she embraced television in her late 50s.
A dramatic actress who became a musical star and finished as a cozy crime icon.
What stands out to you is the immense contrast between the two pillars of her genius. The persona that earned her universal affection and global celebrity was the saintly and safe Jessica Fletcher, the strong single-woman role model. Yet the roles that earned her initial critical respect and defined her acting genius, from the insidious political villain in The Manchurian Candidate to the desperate, murderous, and unsettling Nellie Lovett in Sweeney Todd, were defined by psychological complexity and pure villainy. What does this deep dichotomy tell us about the difference between the challenging roles that define an artist's peak performance and the comforting, steady characters that ultimately earn the greatest, longest-lasting public love?